Miss Collier explains!
Dividing decimals.
Today, our learning intentions are to be able to divide decimals by whole numbers and other decimals. We will know we are successful when we can divide decimals. Now we're going to look at the division of decimals. Decimals in everyday life. Division using decimal places is required in many different calculations, especially averages. One example is calculating a batting average in cricket, where Australia's highest Test cricket batting average is 99.94, held by Sir Donald Bradman. Similar to the multiplication of decimals, there are so many real-life examples of times we're going to use division of decimals. However, unlike multiplication, where we try to ignore the decimal and then figure it out at the end, in division of decimals, we try to manipulate the number so that we're not actually dividing by a decimal at all. When we are doing division of a decimal by a whole number, it is quite easy. We just complete the division as we normally would, and then the decimal point in the quotient, which is the answer, goes directly above the decimal point that was in the dividend, which was the question. So in my example, you can see we've just done the normal division and then those decimal points are lined up, just like in addition and subtraction. There is a difference when we try to divide decimals by decimals. We can't really do that very easily. So what we want to do is change the divisor into a whole number so we can easily just divide. And as long as we make the same changes to the divisor and the dividend, then we're not actually changing the number at all. In this example here, we've moved the decimals 2 places to the right. This has made our divisor a whole number of 2. In actual fact, we haven't moved the decimal, we've times them both by 100. So does that mean we've changed the question? Well, no, not really. I want you to think about it like this. If I had 20 divided by 5, how much is going to be in each group? Well, that is 4. And if I had 20,000 divided by 5,000, how many is going to be in each group? It's going to be 4. So by multiplying them both by 1,000, we haven't actually changed the answers. We're just scaling up the numbers to make it easier to divide by. This means we never actually have to divide by a decimal. If we want to divide a decimal by multiples of 10, it is much the same as when we did the multiplication. We're going to remove those zeros and then factor them in at the end. So let's practice dividing decimals by whole numbers. First thing we need to check is that the divisor is a whole number. And because it is, that means we don't need to do anything else. We can just straight divide. So we're going to write our question out under the division bar. So I've got 3 divided into 42.837. Now I just divide like normal. How many times does 3 go into 4? That's 1 with 1 left over. How many times does 3 go into 12? That's 4 times. I've hit a decimal point, so I need to put a decimal point in my answer. How many times does 3 go into 8? That's 2 times with 2 left over. How many times does 3 go into 23? That's 7 times, 2 left over. How many times does 3 go into 27? That's 9 times, nothing left over, nothing left. That's my final answer. So my answer is 14.279. I always like to think, is it reasonable? So that's around 45, and 45 divided by 3 is 15, and my answer is around 15. Seems pretty reasonable. B, the answer is a whole number, so I'm good to go. I'm drawing my division bar, and I'm writing 0.0234, and that's being divided by 4. So, how many times does 4 go into 0? That's 0, and we need to write that 0 there. Then I've got the decimal point. I'm putting a decimal point in my answer. How many times does 4 go into 0? 0. How many times does 4 go into 2? 0 again with 2 left over. How many times does 4 go into 23? That's 5 times with 3 left over. How many times does 4 go into 34? That's 8 times with 2 left over. I've got nothing to put the leftovers on, but remember I can have as many zeros as I want. So I'm going to put a little 0 there. Now, how many times does 4 go into 20? That's 5 times. So my answer is 0.00585. You try to divide some decimals by whole numbers. Let's quickly check your answers. 4 into 1 goes 0, 1 remainder. 4 into 15 goes 3 with 3 remainder. I've hit a decimal point, I put a point. 4 into 31 goes 7 with 3 remainder. 4 into 38 goes 9 with 2 remainder. And 4 into 24 goes 6 times. 15 is close to 16, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. And that, my answer is 3.7, which is almost 4. Reasonable. B, 5 into 0 goes 0. I've hit the decimal point, putting a decimal point in my answer. 5 into 4 goes 0 with 4 left over. 5 into 41 goes 8 with 1 left over. 5 into 13 goes 2 with 3 left over. And 5 into 30 goes 6. 0.0826. Let's practice dividing decimals by decimals. First, I can see that my divisor is not a whole number, so that's my first step. I'm writing A and I'm writing out what I have in brackets. 62.316 divided by 0.03. Now I want the decimal place to move 2 places here, and 2 is 2 zeros, so I'm timesing by 100. Underneath I'm going to write equals and I'm going to move the decimal place 2 to the right on both of them. So now I've got 6,231.6 divided by 3. Now that it's a whole number, I can draw my division bar and I can divide like normal. 3 into 6 goes 2. 3 into 2 goes 0 with 2 left over. 3 into 23 goes 7 with 2 left over. 3 into 21 goes 7, none left over. My decimal point is there, so I've put it in my answer. And 3 into 6 goes 2. So I've got 2,077. Notice that my answer is larger than my original question, and that's because I'm dividing by decimal. Same as when we divide by fractions and numbers that are smaller than 1, it actually makes our original number get bigger. B. Notice my divisor is not a whole number, so I'm going to write the whole thing out in a bracket. Now I've got to figure out how many places does my decimal need to move. That's 1, 2, 3. So I'm timesing by 1,000 because 1,000 has 3 zeros. Underneath, I'm going to write what each of them times by 1,000 would be. So this is 1, 2, 3, and it's 31.52 divided by 2. Now that my divisor is a whole number, I can draw my bar and write my division underneath. And now I can do it like normal. 2 into 3 goes 1 with 1 left over. 2 into 11 goes 5 with 1 left over. I've hit a decimal place, so I'm putting a decimal place in my answer. 2 into 15 goes 7 with 1 left over. 2 into 12 goes 6 times. 15.76. You try divide some decimals by decimal. Let's quickly check your answers. I need to make this a whole number, that's 2 jumps, so I'm timesing by 100, 2 zeros. I'm going to multiply them both by 100 to give me 4,718.8 divided by 4. Now that it's a whole number, I can do a normal division. 4 into 4 goes 1. 4 into 7 goes 1, 3 left over. 4 into 31 goes 7 with 3 left over. 4 into 38 goes 9 with 2 left over. I've hit a decimal point. I put a decimal point in my answer. And 4 into 28 goes 7. 1,179.7. B. My divisor is not a whole number and I need it to move 1, 2, 3. So I'm timesing by 1,000. Going to multiply them both by 1,000. 1, 2, 3. 251.4 divided by 3. 3 into 2 goes 0, 2 left over. 3 into 25 is 8 with 1 left over. 3 into 11 is 3 with 2 left over. Decimal point, so I'm putting a decimal point. 3 into 24 goes 8. 83.8. Let's look at dividing decimals by multiples of 10. Here I have 67.04 divided by 8,000. So I'm just going to follow the same procedure as multiplying decimals. I'm going to cross out these zeros and I'm going to put it in 3 and put it in a box to save for later. Now I can complete my division just like normal. 8 into 6 goes 0 with 6 left over. 8 into 67 goes 8 with 3 left over. I've hit a decimal, so I'm putting a decimal. 8 into 30 goes 3 with 6 left over. And 8 into 64 is 8. When we did multiplication of decimals, we now took the number and multiplied it by 1,000. But this is division. So now we're going to take our number and divide by 1,000. So we take whatever number we have, 8.38, and we write divided by 1 because we've already used up the 8. And how many zeros did we have? 1, 2, 3. Now when we divide by numbers that are multiples of 10, we move the decimal to the left, however many zeros there are, which is 3. For this example, I move this 1 and then I run out of numbers. But I know that there's an infinite number of zeros in front. So now I can go 1, 2, 3, giving me an answer of 0.00838. Remembering I'm putting that 0 in front so that people can easily see the decimal. You try divided decimal by multiples of 10. Let's quickly check your answers. I've got 3 zeros, I'm crossing them out and I'm putting them into a box. Now I'm doing my division like normal. 7 into 1 is 0 with 1 left over. 7 into 14 is 2 with none left over. 7 into 9 is 1 with 2 left over. I've hit a decimal, so I must put my decimal in. 7 into 28 goes 4, 21.4. But now I must get back my zeros. So I write out what I have. I have 21.4. And now I'm dividing by 1 and I've got 3 zeros. So that's going to move my decimal place 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. So I need another 0 here. That's giving me equals 0.0214. For this next section, I'm going to show you how we can put all of our decimal operations all together. I don't want it to take too much of your time and be too confusing, so I'm not going to explain how to do addition and multiplication and division of decimals because you should have already learnt that, but more so I'm going to show you how we can show our working out. Here I need to calculate this using order of operations, which I know is bum-dass. I have no brackets, I have no orders, so I'm going to do multiplication and division from left to right, and then addition and subtraction from left to right. When completing a question like this, I like to have 2 columns running at the same time. In my left-hand column, I'm just going to do the question and keep the parts of the question all together in every line. On my right-hand column is my working out for the operations of decimals. I can find a multiplication and a division, which is going to happen first, moving from left to right. So on my right-hand side, I'm going to perform these operations. I like to give myself a heading so I know exactly what I'm doing, and I write out the operation that I'm about to perform. Then I perform my multiplication of decimals as normal. Let's do it. Now that I've finished my multiplication, I'm going to insert it back into my question. So I'm writing an equals, and I'm writing all the other information I haven't used. So I haven't used 3.8. Take away. Now I've done this 1.6 times 0.5, so I'm writing in my answer, which is 0.720. And then I'm writing a plus. Now I'm going to perform this division. I quickly want to show you something. 4 into 10 goes 2 times with 2 left over, but I've got nothing behind me. Now I've shown you this before, we can add zeros, but here I don't just want to add 0 because that's making it 500. I've got to add in a decimal, which means I've got to add the decimal into the answer. So if ever you've got a remainder, you can add that decimal in. Now that I've finished my division, I can put my answer, which is 12.5, back into the question. Next thing I'm going to do is addition and subtraction from left to right. And I've got a subtraction first. Now that I've finished my subtraction, I can rewrite it out, and I've done this operation, so I'm writing in the answer, which is 3.08. And then I'm writing all the other information I haven't used yet, which is 12.5. Don't forget, you have to carry down every piece of information every time to make those equals sign true. My last operation is an addition. Now that I've done my last operation, it equals 15.58. Miss Collier, do I have to show all this working out? Yes, and I suggest doing it to the side in an orderly fashion so that someone could follow along exactly the steps that you've taken. That's why I like to use headings, and I like to put them in order that I completed them, and then put the information back into the order of operation. You need to show all of that working. You can give it a go. Let's quickly check these answers for you. I've got a multiplication and a division straight up first. Now that I've figured out my multiplication, I can write my next line. I'm writing out everything I haven't used so far and replacing the operation with the answer, 5.265. Take away. Now I'm going to do this division. Now I've finished my division, I can put my answer in there, 4.8. And now I'm going to do my addition. Once I've finished my addition, I can write the next line, replacing the question with the answer I have figured out. And now I'm writing take 4.8, and this will be my last operation, a subtraction. Once I've completed my subtraction, I'm going to write in my last answer, which is 9.765. Giving me the final total. I hope you now know how to divide decimals.